first thing the man did after returning to the time before the apocalypse broke out was to slaughter all the cows in his home. Everyone in the village thought he had gone mad. Those cows were the family's entire livelihood. Even his ex-girlfriend thought he was doing it to gather money for a bride price. She immediately told him to drop the idea, said that even if he sold all the cows he wouldn't come up with 10 million. Besides, she had already found a rich benefactor. Before she could finish, Jojo told her to get lost. He didn't want her slowing him down. Hearing this, the woman stormed off in anger. She turned and left in a fury. At that moment, Jojo's parents arrived. They hurriedly tried to stop him, telling him to put down the knife. If he slaughtered all the cows, how would they survive? Hearing his parents' voices, Jojo froze. The knife fell from his hand with a clatter. Seeing his parents standing safely before him, he held back the tears in his eyes. Then he ran forward and hugged them tightly. Crying, he said, "This time I will protect you." His mother was puzzled by his unusual behavior. His father quickly asked what was going on. Jojo told his parents there was no time to explain. "But please trust me, we must sell all these cows immediately." After hearing this, his parents exchanged a glance. Ultimately, they chose to trust their son. His father then joined him to start slaughtering the cows. Even his mother rolled up her sleeves to help. Seeing their actions, the villagers mocked them, saying the whole family was crazy. At that moment, Jojo checked the time. Less than 4 hours remained. He needed to slaughter all the cows as quickly as possible, so he shouted to the villagers for help. "I'll pay 500 yuan for every cow slaughtered." Hearing the incredible offer, everyone turned around. They all claimed to be experts at slaughtering cows, saying they could handle one in seconds. In less than 10 minutes, thousands of cows had been dealt with. Jojo then called a meat dealer. He sold the beef for half the market price. His parents were heartbroken by his actions. They lamented losing hundreds of thousands in value. However, before they could ask more, Jojo grabbed the money and said he needed to go to town. Before leaving, he told his parents, "Stay home and wait for me to return. No matter what happens, do not leave the house." Then he drove off towards the town in a hurry. At this moment, Jojo didn't dare waste a second. In just 2 hours the calamity would begin. At first, only livestock would turn bloodthirsty and violent, attacking and tearing apart any living thing they saw. But soon after, humans started showing the same symptoms. The infection spread at an alarming speed. Anyone scratched or bitten would become infected. In his previous life, Jojo had been helpless during the calamity, watching his family die right in front of him. But in this life, he would never let that tragedy happen again. Soon Jojo arrived at the town. The first thing he did was raid the pharmacy for all its medicine. Then he bought large quantities of diesel and generators. He knew that power would fail soon after the outbreak. Next, he bought various self-defense tools and a large stock of daily necessities. But there was still one thing more important, and that was gunpowder. Jojo took the remaining money and went to a factory. He knew that the boss here had access to a large stash of black gunpowder. As soon as Jojo entered, he slammed the money on the table. He demanded to buy 1,000 pounds of black gunpowder, but the boss sneered at him with disdain. He claimed he was a legitimate businessman and would never sell something like black gunpowder. Jojo chuckled coldly. "You and I both know how legit you are. Last year I saw you in the woods with that woman. She's probably still buried there, isn't she?" Hearing this, the boss's face filled with shock. He immediately instructed his secretary to arrange the shipment from the warehouse. Seeing this, Jojo followed them. As he left, he waved and said goodbye to the boss. "Pleasure doing business." The boss, however, gave him a sinister smile, wishing he could kill him on the spot. But there was no time to deal with that now. He needed to focus on gathering supplies quickly. While Jojo was unloading the goods, his older brother suddenly told him their sister hadn't come home yet. Hearing this, Jojo's heart sank. At this hour, she should have been back from school already. Could this be the butterfly effect caused by his rebirth? Thinking of this, he abandoned the unloading. He told his brother he would go to the school to find her, and asked him to stay home to take care of their parents. As soon as he got in the car, Jojo floored the gas pedal. He kept praying in his heart that nothing would happen to his sister. Suddenly, a figure darted in front of the car. He quickly swerved but still ended up hitting it. Luckily, the car wasn't badly damaged. He held his head and turned back to check what had happened. But the next second he froze. The stray dog he had hit, now broken and mangled, stood back up. He immediately realized that the stray dog had mutated. The apocalyptic catastrophe had indeed begun early. Meanwhile, in the classroom, a group of mean girls were gossiping about Jojo killing cows. They deliberately mocked Jojo's sister. "Is your brother out of his mind? He killed all the cows in one day." Jo Ying pretended not to hear them and ignored them. Although she didn't understand what was going on, she believed her brother must have his reasons. But to her surprise, the mean girls escalated their taunts. They spread rumors online accusing Jojo of being cheated on. They claimed he killed all his cows to please someone. Hearing this, Jo Ying couldn't hold back anymore. She slapped the mean girl's phone out of her hand. The mean girl immediately pushed Jo Ying to the ground. She grabbed Jo Ying's hair and started berating her. When Jo Ying tried to resist, The mean girl pulled out a box cutter. She demanded Zhou Ying kneel and call her daddy. Otherwise she wouldn't let her leave the school today. But just as she finished speaking, the mean girl suddenly spat out black blood. Zhou Ying was terrified by the sight. Without thinking she turned and ran. But as soon as she stepped out of the classroom she was even more shocked. The hallway was filled with infected students. They were crazily biting anyone they saw. At that moment one zombie locked eyes with Zhou Ying. In the next second it charged at her like a lunatic. Fortunately Zhou Ying's legs gave out from fear, and she collapsed to the ground narrowly avoiding the attack. But before she could catch her breath, another zombie emerged from the classroom. It was none other than the mean girl who had bullied her. Zhou Ying tried to get up and run, but in the blink of an eye, the mean girl zombie lunged at her. Just when it seemed like there was no hope, Jojo arrived just in time with a flying kick. He sent the mean girl zombie flying dozens of meters. Seeing that familiar figure, Zhou Ying knew her brother had saved her. Just then another zombie locked onto the two of them. Before it could react, Jojo darted forward in a flash. With one swift slash he took it down effortlessly. Seeing his sister unharmed, Jojo finally breathed a sigh of relief. By now the school was heavily infected. Jojo didn't dare waste a moment. He hurriedly led his sister back home. He noticed that his sister seemed worried, probably about their parents' safety. He softly reassured her not to worry. Mom, Dad and Big Brother are safe at home. Hearing her brother's words, Zhou Ying finally smiled, a rare sight. Soon the two of them arrived home. But just as they stepped inside, their mother told Jojo that something big had happened. Many people in the village have mutated. They're all heading toward the village committee. Hearing this, Jojo fell into deep thought. He couldn't let the zombies spread any further. Otherwise the village wouldn't survive the night. With that in mind, he quickly told his family to pack up their supplies. Then he headed toward the village committee to check the situation. He had to rescue someone important. Meanwhile at the village committee, a girl had barricaded the door with a cabinet. She was unaware that the villagers had turned into zombies. She thought they were just worried about missing family members, and had gathered to cause trouble. Suddenly a withered hand broke through the door. It lunged at the girl. Luckily she reacted in time and dodged to the side. In the next second, the villagers in the cabinet were sent flying by a powerful kick. Jojo stood on top of the cabinet holding a knife. He kicked several villagers to death with ease. The girl tried to say something, but Jojo instantly appeared by her side. He pressed his knife against the villager's mouth. With a sharp sound, the villager's head was sliced cleanly in half. The girl was even more shocked at the sight. Before she could recover, Jojo grabbed her by the face. He checked her eyes and mouth for traces of blood. It turned out she was the person Jojo came to save. In his previous life she was a sharpshooting sniper. She had saved his life more than once. Seeing the girl as she was now, he found it hard to believe she was the formidable Xia Bingbing. At that moment a bespectacled man pulled the girl aside and shouted at Jojo. "Joe, have you lost your mind? Why are you killing these villagers?" Jojo calmly explained, "I'm not killing people. To be precise, they're no longer human. They're zombies and they'll attack anything alive." Before he could finish, the bespectacled man interrupted him. "What kind of joke is this? You think this is a movie? That's clearly old Zhang from the village. He came to ask for help finding his granddaughter." An older man chimed in, "You're insane. I'm calling the police to report this." Jojo replied, "What's the point of calling the police now? The police station is probably overrun already." And just then, the gang leader arrived at the village committee with his lackeys. He clapped mockingly and said, "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe you could be this brazen, killing so many people and saying calling the police is useless, and using this zombie excuse to cover your crimes." Hearing this, the lackeys joined in cheering. They suggested tying up Jojo the murderer. At that moment Xia Bingbing loudly intervened. "Those villagers really did lose their minds. Jojo did this to save us. Let's figure out what's really going on first." Jojo smirked and said, "Thank you for trusting me." He then told the crowd he could prove those villagers were zombies. "If you're not afraid of dying, follow me to the back mountain." Seeing the look in Jojo's eyes, the gang leader broke into a cold sweat. But recalling that Jojo had dirt on his crimes, he decided this was a good chance to take him out. He quickly agreed, saying he'd go to the back mountain to investigate. "But I'll be bringing my bodyguards with me, since I can't trust a murderer. As long as they're not afraid of dying, it's fine." Thinking Jojo had fallen into his trap, the gang leader smiled sinisterly. But to his surprise, Xia Bingbing and the others spoke up. "We're coming too to see what's really going on. After all, the village head went to the back mountain earlier today, and we still haven't heard from him." Hearing this, the gang leader cursed internally, "Damn it. If you're all rushing to your deaths, don't blame me." Soon the group arrived at the back mountain. They found the village head's car parked there. Judging by the warmth of the hood, the car had been there for quite some time. At that moment Jojo noticed something nearby. Looking at the broken tree branches, and the traces of blood on the leaves, he deduced that zombies had passed through here recently. He told the group to follow the trail. The gang leader, seeing no chance to make his move, had no choice but to follow along. Soon they arrived at a strange cave. Jojo tried hard to recall his past life. If he remembered correctly, this was the site of the first zombie outbreak. Realizing the situation hadn't worsened yet, he decided to eliminate the threat at its root. He told the group he would go in first to investigate. Hearing this, the gang leader sneered coldly. This cave must be the scene of your crimes, right? What are you rushing in to destroy the evidence? Hearing this, Jojo sighed deeply. You talk too much for someone so clueless. If you're not afraid of dying, come with me. Let's see if the cave is crawling with zombies. Before he could finish his sentence, the gang leader's eyes widened in shock. A hand suddenly reached out from the darkness of the cave. Fortunately, Jojo reacted in time. He dodged the woman's attack with a swift move. As her face came into view, the bespectacled man immediately recognized her as his wife. He rushed forward to ask why she was here, but in the next second, his wife opened her mouth and lunged to bite him. In the nick of time, Jojo quickly pushed the man aside. He wedged his knife into the woman's mouth. Before the man could react, his wife's head was split in two right before his eyes. As her body fell to the ground, the bespectacled man broke down sobbing uncontrollably. Jojo was about to ask if he had been hurt, but the man suddenly roared at Jojo. I'll kill you to avenge my wife. He swung a stick at Jojo's head as he shouted. Seeing this, Jojo slapped him to the ground. Calm down, Jojo said. Your wife had already turned into a zombie. For everyone's safety I had to kill her. It doesn't matter if you hate me. But the bespectacled man glared at Jojo. If I killed one of your family members in front of you, would you still be this calm? Hearing this, a flash of murderous intent appeared in Jojo's eyes. He grabbed the man by the neck. Family is my bottom line. I won't allow anyone to harm them. At that moment, Jojo's anger reached its peak. He lifted the bespectacled man high into the air by his neck. But the man still refused to submit. Meanwhile, the gang leader fanned the flames. Jojo had completely lost control. Ignoring Sha Bingbing and the others' attempts to calm him, he drew his blade and aimed it at the man. Luckily, a hand stopped him just in time. When Jojo didn't loosen his grip, the person headbutted him hard. The blow sent Jojo crashing to the ground. At this moment, Jojo slowly regained his senses. He realized that it was his older brother Joe Shu. It turned out Joe Shu was worried about his safety, so he had followed the trail all the way to the back mountain. Seeing the bespectacled man drowning in grief over his wife, Joe Shu angrily shouted at him. Pull yourself together, you saw what happened to your wife. If it weren't for Jojo, you'd have turned into a zombie too. Under Joe Shu's urging, the bespectacled man finally gathered himself. But just then, a shout suddenly echoed from inside the cave. Sha Bingbing recognized it as the village head's voice. She was about to rush in but was stopped by Jojo. Don't be reckless, there's something strange about this voice. However, a strong man nearby thought there was still a survivor inside. He believed it wasn't dangerous. He declared he'd prove his courage to the group, and strode boldly into the cave. But after only a few steps, several large hands grabbed him. With a sickening sound, man's lower body dropped to the ground. His upper body was being held by a zombie with blood-red eyes. Behind it, a horde of zombies packed the cave. At first, the group didn't understand what had happened, until the man's upper body was thrown out of the cave. Seeing this, the gang leader's face turned pale with fear. In the next second, the zombies went berserk, charging at the group. The sheer number was far beyond Jojo's expectations. He quickly told everyone to get behind him. But just then a hand pushed Jojo aside. What, kid? Trying to hog all the glory again? Don't forget your brother is a martial artist too. Jojo jokingly said, I wouldn't dare steal your spotlight. Looks like your skills haven't dulled one bit, big bro. The zombies' growls interrupted their banter. Facing the horde, neither showed any fear. With just a glance at each other, they knew to rely on their old strategy to handle the zombies. The older brother blocked the zombies' movements from below, while Jojo targeted the upper half, delivering fatal blows. With their seamless teamwork, they quickly wiped out the zombie horde. But just as the group thought the crisis was over, the village head's cries for help echoed again from the cave. After discussing it, the Joe brothers decided to have the others return to the village to settle the villagers. After all, they didn't know what was inside the cave, and too many people would only be a hindrance. Seeing the determination in Jojo's eyes, Sha Bingbing decided not to argue further. She reluctantly followed the others back toward the village. Once they saw the group leave safely, the Joe brothers ventured into the pitch-black cave. But Jojo soon sensed something was wrong. Using his flashlight, he looked around. A dried zombie corpse suddenly appeared before him. Its chest had a large hole, as if its heart had been removed. While Jojo was examining the body, his older brother seemed to hear something. He turned toward the sound and saw a person slumped on the ground. The person was mumbling, "Help me, save me." Judging by the person's clothes, the older brother recognized him as the village head. He shouted to him, but in the next second the village head snapped his head around. Countless tentacles writhed from his chest. The sight stunned even the battle-hardened Jojo. Before he could react, the tentacles came surging at them with incredible speed. Fortunately, Jojo managed to push his brother aside. He quickly drew the short blade from his waist. With a swift step he dodged the tentacles and charged forward, attempting to take down the village head with one strike. But to his surprise the blade didn't harm the village head at all. Instead Jojo was struck by a tentacle and sent flying dozens of meters. Seeing this his older brother quickly shone the flashlight on the zombie. The zombie lost its ability to move under the strong light. The brothers took the opportunity to escape the cave. Once outside Jojo was puzzled. That zombie seemed different from the others. Jojo guessed it was a mutated zombie. It's likely a genetic mutation caused by cross-infection with an animal. Mutated zombies are stronger than regular ones and have special abilities. Judging by the village head's mutation, it's likely a second-tier mutation caused by bats. Thankfully the moonlight tonight is bright enough. The light must have kept the bat-infected zombie at bay. But just as he finished speaking, countless bats swarmed out of the cave. They seemed to be following a command, forming a swarm that blotted out the moonlight. Seeing this the brothers simultaneously thought this is bad. But before they could react, the mutated zombie had already closed in behind them. It charged at Jojo with incredible speed. Although Jojo tried his best to grab its tentacles, the mutant had already cornered Jojo. Just as Jojo was losing hope, a car suddenly came speeding toward them. The driver was none other than Xia Bingbing. She yelled for Jojo to get out of the way. In the next second she rammed the mutant zombie, sending it flying. Seeing the mutant unable to move, Jojo quickly jumped onto the car and dealt it a final blow. At this moment Jojo let out a sigh of relief. I didn't expect Xia to be so brave. But when Jojo and Xia Bingbing looked at him, they both wore expressions of shock. Jojo's arm had been bitten by the mutant zombie. The virus had already spread to his face. Seeing his injured brother Jojo fell into deep thought. Having been reborn he thought he could protect Jojo. Angrily he clenched his teeth. He turned to the corpse of the mutant zombie they had just killed. As if venting his rage he repeatedly stabbed the body, one strike after another into the mutant's corpse. Jojo and Xia Bingbing shouted, "Stop, calm down." Jojo didn't stop. Finally he extracted a zombie crystal core from the back of its head. Handing it to Jojo he explained, "This is the concentrated virus core, a zombie nucleus. Now if you eat it there's a chance you'll evolve into an ability user, making you immune to the zombie virus. But there's also a chance you'll turn into a monster like that one." Hearing this Jojo didn't hesitate and swallowed the crystal core. He even complained, "Why didn't you say this earlier? Tastes fine, just a little bland." Jojo replied, "We'll know the results within 2 days." Hearing this Jojo headed straight for the cave. He told Jojo, "If I don't come out in 2 days, seal the entrance. But if I become an ability user, don't be jealous." Jojo smiled faintly at his brother's confidence. What they didn't notice was that behind a tree, a shadow was watching them. The person was Lin Jia. He grinned mysteriously. "So that's how it is. Let me give you a little help." As time passed it gradually became morning on the second day. Zhou Ying fully armed approached Jojo's room. But she found that Jojo was already awake, staring out the window. Jojo turned and noticed his sister's strange outfit. He teased her, "Why do you look like some kind of oddball? You told us to strengthen our defenses. That's why I got this suit of armor. So how does it look? Pretty cool, right?" Jojo extended a finger and lightly poked her armor. Immediately Zhou Ying toppled over and started rolling around. She kept rolling all the way out of the room and into the yard. Jojo looked up and saw their father reinforcing a 3-meter wall. At that moment Zhou Ying crashed into the wall. Seeing this their father jumped down from the wall. Poor Zhou Ying was sent rolling even further. Their father then picked up a barrel of gunpowder and said, "Where did you get these treasures? Give your dad a couple of boxes to play with." Jojo sighed, "This is a weapon, not a toy." But Joe dad grabbed a barrel and ran off saying, "Don't be so stingy." Suddenly there was a commotion behind them. Jojo turned to see Joe mom armed to the teeth and stepping firmly on her daughter.